Hi everyone, welcome to the Miss Sayé Show, and today I have a very special guest, and what a perfect timing to have Zoltan Istvan on our show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, thank you. I recently watched your documentary, the documentary about you, and very much enjoyed it. So glad that you had time to chat with us today. So could you please, I just want to jump in there. I want to learn from you, what is transhumanism?
Sure. Well, transhumanism is a social movement now with millions of people around the world that want to use science and technology to radically modify the human body and also to modify the human experience. It can be anything from exoskeleton suits to brain implants for Parkinson's to even things like driverless cars and artificial intelligence. It's just radical technology applied to humanity.
Very interesting. I thank you for shortening it because I am very interested to elaborate on all those little subjects that you said. Did you say skeleton suit?
Well, yeah, so exoskeleton suits. So for example, basically a third of the world has mobility issues, whether you have disabilities or you're handicapped, but exoskeleton suits are allowing people to get out of wheelchairs, or older people or heavier people to be able to walk, and even sometimes in some cases, climb mountains again. And this is the great revolutionary trend of transhumanist technology, is it's really enabling us to be completely fit human beings again, even if our bodies are not totally fit.
How interesting. While I was watching the documentary, a very, very interesting documentary, Immortality or Bust, I recommend to everyone who's watching this, go get this movie and watch it. It's very informative and very interesting journey you had.
When he was 21, he sailed across the planet in a boat. He took 500 books with him. He's credited with inventing volcano surfing. Zoltan Istvan, he's running for president in 2016.
A typical transhumanist is somebody who has an interest in using science and technology to radically enhance themselves.
It's like a port. More body modification than anything.
So when I present my tag to the car, it unlocks the door. Another reader to start my car.
This goes right onto my skull. Biohacking definitely is a hidden world.
This has been part of the problem with transhumanism, is how do we spread transhumanism without doing something very provocative, what you probably really can't.
The plan is to drive this sarcophagus on wheels to Washington, D.C.
I learned that somebody in the movie, they stated that transhumanism, the reason that we are dying is almost, you should look at it as a disease. Is that the correct point of view of transhumanism, or did I misunderstand that?
No, I would say the number one goal of transhumanism is to overcome death with science. It's really to use either anti-aging techniques or genetic editing therapies or stem cell techniques or even cyborg parts. Most people die from organ failure. That's really why people die. So transhumanists are trying to create artificial hearts, artificial lungs, artificial kidneys. And essentially, as people start getting older and aging and things start wearing out, we would be replacing those body parts with synthetic ones, and therefore able to keep people alive dramatically longer. And the great goal would be that one day, maybe in 50 or 100 years, people wouldn't die at all.
That's incredible. What a fresh point of view. I'm very excited to witness your journey. So coming to that, I would love to talk about your campaign. Did it garner the awareness that you were hoping for? Can you please dive into it and tell us a little bit about the whole campaign experience?
Sure. Well, what happened is the transhumanist movement didn't have a political element. So I had founded the Transhumanist Party, which is America's first science political party. And then I was its presidential nominee. And I ended up running for president over a 2-year plus time span. And, at first it was hard to get any attention. But then we had this giant bus shaped like a coffin, which the documentary is about, because of course, transhumanists trying to overcome death. So a coffin was a good way to tell people what we're trying to overcome. And very quickly, we got huge amounts of media interested. Now, I'm formerly a journalist with National Geographic and also the New York Times. So I had a couple of editor buddies that came on board, and all of a sudden, there was an explosion of media coverage on the immortality bus trip, which took, about 4 months. And we were really glad because it was the most amount of attention transhumanism had ever received as a movement. And ever since then, it's kind of been like an avalanche. It just continues to grow. And of course, it continues to grow as the technology that we're talking about gets closer and closer as well.
That's incredible. So you seem pretty satisfied with the awareness that you brought to transhumanism through this campaign.
Yes. Of course, I never really anticipated having a chance at winning the presidency. That was never the goal. It might be a goal in 15 or 20 years when I become more well-known.
Sure.
But right now, when you look at movements like environmentalism, for example, environmentalism really started with Greenpeace in the 70s when they did a bunch of activism regarding anti-nuclear testing as well as anti-whaling, and in terms of hunting whales. And environmentalism was also started by a number of journalists. And there's a great way to get social movements to take off by getting a ton of media coverage so that people say, hey, that's a very interesting movement. Maybe I'd like to join that. Maybe I'd like to help. Maybe I'd like to even vote for Zoltan. I mean, this was our strategy, and we were grateful that it worked. You never know if these things work, but this time it did.
That's incredible and courageous, very inspiring and very fresh. I very much enjoyed watching the movie, and I recommend it to other people as well. And, by watching that, by the way you went about it, I learned about transhumanism. So at least I can tell, one person learned about transhumanism and became, interested to follow the journey or help the journey. So another question I have is about being a good global citizen. That's what's personally very important to me. How we can improve the quality of our life as we're becoming a better global citizen. In your opinion, how could transhumanism help becoming a better global citizen?
Well, we consider, the transhumanist, activists, transhumanism as the most humanitarian movement on planet Earth. And the reason we consider it that way is because our entire perspective is about improving your health and your longevity. We are the people that want to make it so that you do not suffer in life at all. And that kind of extends, frankly, to animals too. There are plenty of transhumanists who want to make who want to make it so no living things suffer, if possible, at some point in the far future. But the real goal is that we want to make it so people don't lose family members to cancer, don't lose family members to auto accidents, don't die, don't have these great separations, because right now about 100 billion people since sort of time has started have died. And death is a very terrible thing, especially if it happens tragically, especially if it doesn't happen on one's own terms. And frankly, death usually doesn't happen on one's own terms. So we're trying to go in there and make it so people, if they want to die, of course, that's fine. They'll have the choice. But we're trying to give people a strategy and science so that if they want to live and continue living and see their great-great-great-grandchildren, they'll be able to do so. So we consider it a deeply humanitarian movement to end suffering. And that's really what I think about being a good citizen. If I asked anyone on the street, what could you do for me? I'd say, well, make it so I don't suffer. And that's really what transhumanism is about. So I would say that's how we try to be good global citizens.
Oh, incredible. That is a great contribution as a global citizen to, all others to, end their physical suffering in one way or the other. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. In the movie, I witnessed that you entered this lab and they were using chips and you actually participated. Could you tell me about that? Is it something that you have it with you right now, or is it not temporary?
No, it's fully, it's in me. It's almost been there for about 4 or 5 years now. So I have a microchip inside my hand that can unlock my front door. It can start a car. It can turn on and off this video. In fact, just if I have a password controlled, it basically acts as a series of keys. You can even trade things like Bitcoin through it. But it holds a bunch of information. Now it's very tiny. They take a horse syringe. A horse syringe is a little bit larger than a normal syringe, and they inject it into you. And a lot of people are scared, consider it like, ooh, weird, evil technology. But really, it replaces about 30% of your wallet, because a lot of your wallet is just identification or information packed in it. And this can act as a passport. This can act as a payment device. This can act as keys for your car. And I personally use it for my home, which we have an automatic door that I just scan my hand on and it opens. So when I go surfing or I go running or swimming, I never need to take keys. And that's very functional. So, it's caught on. There's about 100,000 people around the world with these types of implants. But it's not like taking over too fast. But the great goal is that you might go to a coffee shop here in a few years and scan your hand and be able to pay with it. Right now, most of the payment systems don't support the technology, but we hope they will eventually.
That's incredible. And this couple of questions. One is that, does it have any side effect by living in your body? Could it move around?
Well, it's stuck inside fat tissue. They inject it really like right inside tissue. So the tissue kind of grows right around it. And we've never heard of any, incidences where it got dislodged. And my wife, who's a surgeon, a medical doctor, she told me the thing she worried about, because it's so small, it's the size of a grain of rice. So it could potentially travel up a main artery or something. But the reality is there's, with 100,000 people out there, no one's reported that. Some people say it might cause cancer because these devices actually got their start with pets. And there are now something like a few 100,000 pets in America that have them because you can locate people off them, you can identify people. So if your cat gets lost, it can be very useful. And actually it's very useful for those reasons for people too. Like I said, it can act as a passport. But so far there's been almost no medical issues whatsoever with it, except sometimes you might get an infection when you put it in, but that's incredibly rare.
I am so fascinated by you. This is incredible. And this chip, could you upgrade it? Could you add information to it? You need to change it once in a while? Because as things expand, you want to add in new things to your wallet, or you want to add you operate it from your computer? Is that how it is?
Well, you can upgrade it with software. The problem is that you do have to change it just like your phone. And so I have almost 5-year-old chip, and the memory of it is just simply not as good as the new ones. So that is one problem. But I got to say, it takes about 30 seconds to inject it, and it takes about 2 minutes to cut your hand open just a little bit and pull it out and put in another one. So the procedure, you can do it with your friends or you don't need to go to a doctor for it. But let me tell you, just to give you kind of a transhumanist perspective on some of the interesting things, what's happening. 5 years ago, when I got the chip, it was really probably the best up and coming technology for keys. But it turns out that iris scanning or eye scanning has taken off, and so with facial recognition have taken off so fast that we're not sure chip implants are going to be the next generation of what we might call key technology or data technology. The best data might actually be iris scanning that actually connects to the cloud and then holds all your information there. And so, for example, at Starbucks would be more, a coffee shop would be more inclined to use that type of software that doesn't have to put anything in you, and just you go up, it scans your eyes in a half second, and that's the way you pay, or that's the way it recognizes your preferences. So it's funny because 5 years ago, I thought the chip technology was going to be the winning technology, but transhumanist technology is changing so quickly that every 2 years, stuff changes. And now it might not even be iris scanning, it might be AI facial recognition. And that's how you pay. Let's say you go to a restaurant, the waitress or waiter might just hold the phone in front of you and scan your face in 1 second, and that's how you paid. And so and the same thing with starting a car. So these are how transhumanist technologies. It's very hard to keep up because I live in Silicon Valley, and there are billions and billions and billions of dollars pouring into what's going to be the next cool and most useful functional technology.
That's incredible. Which you were speaking about iris scanning. I used to travel internationally very often, and one of my favorite airports is Dubai, DXB airport. And every time I would go to Dubai, because I was a frequent traveler, they would use iris scanning. So there was no immigration line. I would just walk through, go to my bag. It would scan, it would recognize that I'm back, and it was very simple. So I don't know if that's the same technology. It sounds similar.
Yeah, I think so. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Eventually, they're going to get it so you don't even have to walk. You don't have to even stop. It will scan you as you're walking down the hallway, and you just go right to your taxi. Now, of course, I've been to Dubai many times too. I love it. And, they're great because they always take these newest technologies and apply them.
Yes, that's one of the things that I love traveling to Dubai, because you get the best and top of everything, literally, like anything you want, the best of it, they literally pick it up and put it in Dubai. Same as their airport, which is well functioning, and they have that technology that I have not seen anywhere else. And I found it quite useful because it reduced so much stress. It added to the quality of my life because
Yes, no.
it reduced the stress. I already did 17 hours of traveling to DXP from LAX. So all I wanted to do, just go get my luggage. And I didn't have to wait in a line, open my passport, look over someone's shoulder, why somebody's taking so long time. I just had to walk through. So I can appreciate that because
and that's really what transhumanist technology is about. A lot of people think, oh, it's this weird science fiction stuff. But what they don't realize is that it's really just about making your life simpler, more functional, and just happier. You can enjoy yourself more because you're not worrying about all these other little things. I mean, eventually we have it so life's very simple. We just go from point A to point B and everything is fun and entertaining, and we don't have to even worry about our safety. I mean, this is the kind of the goal of a lot of transhumanists.
I hear you. I mean, after going to DXP for that simple experience, I was like, oh my God, LAX is so yesterday. It's so behind.
Yes.
So just I gravitate towards that, the new technology that added to the quality of my life. It's an interesting time right now. We are going through election. Nobody's running. You're not running. So nobody's running from the Transhumanism party. Would you like to share your opinion about what's going on? Will you still participate in voting, or how do you see that right now? The political.
Well, I'm not sure who I'm voting for yet, or if I vote at all. I sometimes vote for smaller parties because I like to add diversity to the system, not just the two-party,
Right.
And that way, at least I help the little people out, and I kind of push forward democracy. But one thing I can tell you is that we have become very polarized as a society. Right. Media has been very interesting over the last 5-10 years. I started as a journalist 25 years ago for National Geographic, so I consider myself sort of a veteran in the industry. And I've never seen so much polarization and coverage between left and right. And I don't like that. I like when things are objective and centered and we get a full scope of things. So I'm worried that society and through politics is becoming too fragmented. I really would like to see a lot more unity and a lot more diversity of opinions accepted. I worry that, we are just simply drifting apart. And, anytime we drift apart, it eventually leads to war or to more anger. And I would rather have a society that focuses on science and technology as a unifying factor. How can we work with, let's say, with the Chinese? How can we work with the Russians? How can we become more of a global society?
Yes.
I mean, to be honest with you, I have said, I've written essays about this, so I can't pretend it doesn't exist, but I believe at some point we might have a global democracy, which is stronger than countries, open borders, people can travel, people can have much more freedom, and a certain set of laws where all groups of people, doesn't matter, as well as genders, everybody kind of subscribes to the same type of protections. And we might, it's almost utopic, the things that I believe in. But I think if we work hard, we might get there in 30, 40 years, rather than all this kind of chaos that you see every time you turn on the news. Those are my goals, and most transhumanist goals, one almost like a Star Trek society. That's sort of where I'm hoping to go someday.
I love that, the Star Trek society. Zoltan, if somebody wants to support this, how an individual can help furthering transhumanism, if they're just regular person, they're not a scientist, what could they do?
Well, the first thing I always say, if you're young and you're still in school, try to study science and technology, because I'm not so sure a lot of the other jobs, like maybe being an attorney or being an accountant, will survive given how much technology and automation is happening. But there's going to be a need for engineers and scientists for a long time coming forward, I think. I think in order just to support the movement, it's really just support science and technology and talk more about it with people you love and family members, and, donate to scientists instead of, let's say, your sporting teams or things like that.
I hear you.
One of the great goals of our campaign was to try to turn scientists into celebrities, sort of like sports figures are, because we feel that scientists are underrepresented in terms of popularity, in terms of the work that they do, in terms of the courageous things that they really tackle. Coronavirus has been a good example of why scientists are so critical. Really, our lives are sort of on the line with them. And this is not like football or soccer or tennis. Don't get me wrong, those are fine and fun, but the real hardcore work is happening with scientists and technologists right now, trying to make it so that the world can move forward. So I would just say, however you can, support it. And if you're in a position to go back to school or work in those industries, stick to those industries and always try to open yourself to the future. It's strange to say, but we're not always going to be biological creatures. 100, 200, 500 years from now, we might have many other augmented parts inside ourselves. We might have artificial intelligence. We might be off planet. It's okay to consider embracing those things in the long term. Just start thinking about it and you'll see it'll be a fun world to get off planet and do other things.
Incredible. So much passion, such a positive energy you have. I very much enjoyed it. And please promise you're going to come back on the show, because this was not enough for me and I'm sure not for the audience. So hopefully we can have you back so we can learn more from you and support what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining in, and see you guys next Saturday.
Thank you.